I'm going to call the meeting to order. Okay. This is the Leesburg City Commission meeting. The date is Monday, March 28th, 2022. The invocation and pledge will be led by Commissioner Christian.
Can we all stand, please? Bow our heads. Most gracious and Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for this opportunity to serve our city, our community. We pray now, God, for this world. We pray for peace around our world. We pray for the people of Ukraine. We pray for our troops that are around the world fighting for the freedom that we enjoy. Tonight we spell a special prayer for the Leesburg City Commission, the mayor, the commissioners, our city staff. We pray now the decision that we'll make today night will be beneficial for our entire city, that will be less impactful of those, God, who live in communities, God. We pray, God, for the people that come to visit our city, that they see the charm and the beauty of Leesburg. We thank you. We're so grateful for living in such a wonderful city. We pray for our first responders that keep us safe. We pray for our business owners. We pray for prosperity in their businesses and all of our citizens. We thank you now. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First thing on the agenda, I just want to let everybody know that we're going to pull item 3B and 5C3. Next, moving on to proclamations. I have 3 of them to read, and we'll do the photos after I read all 3. The first one, whereas bicycles play an important role in the lives of millions of Florida residents and visitors, including providing active transportation options for those without access to a motor vehicle. And whereas the Florida Department of Health encourages all citizens to develop habits of physical activity such as walking and biking to become or stay fit, avoid obesity, and reduce the risk of many chronic diseases. And whereas creating a bicycling-friendly community and encouraging bicycling as an active mode of transportation reduces traffic congestion, emissions, and air pollution, and fosters healthy lifestyles, a vibrant economy, and high quality of life. And whereas the Leesburg Trails Master Plan establishes a vision for implementing a citywide system of linked trails to safely connect transit, conservation lands, parks, businesses, recreational facilities, and historic sites. And whereas the City of Leesburg and the Lake Sumter MPO have adopted complete street goals and policies to develop a multimodal transportation system that supports walking and biking as active modes of transportation and prioritizes the safety, accessibility, and mobility of pedestrians and bicyclists on our roadways. And whereas Florida was named the 10th most bicycle-friendly state in America by the League of American Bicyclists for 2019, and Florida ranked first in the infrastructure and funding category, reflecting a strong statewide commitment to building a safe bicycle infrastructure. Now, therefore, I, Mike Peterson, Mayor of the City of Leesburg, do hereby proclaim March 2022 as Florida Bicycle Month in the City of Leesburg and encourage all residents to use bicycles as a mode of transportation, recreation, and exercise. Second one. Whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature, and whereas our quality of life and the economy depend upon a clean, safe, reliable, and sustainable supply of water, and whereas more than 90% of Florida's drinking water is supplied by underlying aquifers, and whereas the state of Florida, water management districts, and local governments are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation, and whereas the City of Leesburg and the state of Florida have designated April, typically a dry month when water demands are most acute, Florida's Water Conservation Month, to educate citizens about how they can help safeguard Florida's water resources. And whereas the City of Leesburg encourages and supports water conservation through a variety of educational programs and special events, and understands it is crucial to the future of Florida's water resources that indoor and outdoor water use be reduced by residents, and whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make positive contributions to decrease water use and safeguard Florida's resources, thus promoting a healthy environment, economy, and community. Now, therefore, I, Mike Peterson, Mayor of the City of Leesburg, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2022 as Water Conservation Month and call upon all members of our community to help preserve this precious resource by practicing water-saving measures and becoming more aware of the need to save water. Mouth is dry. Last one, folks. Whereas libraries are accessible and inclusive places that foster a sense of connection and build community, and whereas libraries connect people to technology, providing access to broadband internet, computers, and training that are critical for accessing many educational and employment opportunities, and whereas libraries offer opportunities for everyone to explore new ideas and become their best selves through access to multimedia content, programs, and classes, in addition to books, and whereas today's libraries and their services extend far beyond the four walls of a building, and everyone is welcome to use their resources, and whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the populations they serve and ensure equity of access for all, and whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions for all members of the community, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status. And whereas libraries are cornerstones of democracy, promoting the free exchange of information and ideas for all. Now, therefore, I, Mike Peterson, Mayor of the City of Leesburg, do hereby proclaim April 3rd to the 9th, 2022 as National Library Week in the City of Leesburg, and encourage all residents to connect with their library by visiting online or in person to access resources and services. Thank you. And that one. Next is presentations by Melissa, Human Resources.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Melissa Arriaga, Director of Human Resources. It is a pleasure and an honor to be able to present these service awards to our current police officers and command staff that have been with us for over 20 years, and those that will be retiring. So we'll get started with our 20-year award for John Summersdorf. Congratulations, John. Now our 25-year awards. First, we'd like to recognize Scott Mack. He has been with the city for 25 years. Before going on to mention those that will be retiring with us, the next 25-year award goes to our very own Chief of Police, Robert Hicks. for 25 years. Now we'd like to recognize those that have been Chiefs Command staff that are getting ready to retire at the end of the month. We have Gary Barrett has given us 29 years of service. He started with the city in November of 1992, and his last day with the city will be March 30th of this week. Congratulations, Gary. The next member of the team that will be retiring is Kim Stewart. She has been with the city for 30 years. She started with us in March of 1992. Unfortunately, Captain Whitaker couldn't be with us today, but we wanted to let you know that we'll be having a retirement reception for Chiefs Command staff that'll be retiring, and it'll be on Wednesday, March 30th at 3 p.m. here at the Venetian Center.
No, thank you, Melissa, and thank you to all the officers for their service to our city. Next is item 3C, the review of our audit. I believe we're going to have a brief presentation.
Good afternoon, Jim Williams, Finance Director. I'd like to introduce Joel Knopp. He's a partner with MSL CPAs, and he's going to present their audit report.
Good evening, Mayor, City Commission. Pleasure to be here and go over some of the highlights of the audit and our results. I have a few slides to review with you. There was a separate letter provided as part of our audit that goes through some of our required communications. And if you want to scroll down, if that's okay. Yes. Keep going. Yeah, this slide in particular, I just wanted to point out that under our required communications, if there were significant issues that we came across in the audit as far as a lack of cooperation from the city staff or any disagreements that came up as it relates to the accounting treatment of items, we would report those to you. But we got full cooperation. We received management representations at the conclusion of the audit that they provided us with everything we requested, and Jim Williams, as Finance Director, was the assigned individual to oversee our services. This next slide, I just want to quickly cover our reports. We audit a variety of areas of the city, and under particular standards, we're looking at internal controls, we're looking at compliance with contracts and grant agreements. The first report here is the main report, which you'll find at the front of the document, which is our opinion on the financial statements themselves as to whether the numbers are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and we gave an unmodified opinion, which means that the numbers are presented that way, and that's a clean opinion. The last report on this slide is our report related to internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. This is required by government audit standards, which every Florida municipality has to undergo this type of audit. And again, no internal control findings and no compliance findings were identified. This is, I think, a good test and good result for showing that the city maintains effective internal controls throughout the year. This isn't something that you can make up for at the end of the year when we come to do the audit. You have to maintain these types of controls consistently, and the city has done that. Next slide. This report specifically relates to the city's major grants, which for fiscal year 21 were the aviation-related grants, as well as the CARES Act, and those we look specifically at those grant dollars that were spent, the specific expenditures, as well as the controls over those expenditures. And so those was what we call a deep dive on those types of grants, and that was also an unmodified opinion, and there were no control findings or compliance findings identified. And then these last two reports relate to the Florida Auditor General rules, and it's a report on investment compliance as well as a variety of other topics that the Florida Auditor General requires to be included. These were also clean reports with no findings. And then these last few slides are just a few general financial highlights. I wanted to point out in the governmental activities, total assets, deferred outflows were $127 million. Total liabilities is $75 million. The unrestricted net position did decrease from fiscal year 20. Most of that relates to the long-term other post-employment benefits liability that the city has to incur related to retiree health care benefits. The business type activities showed a continued improvement in the net or unrestricted net position. The liquidity as well, as you can see, the unrestricted net position as percentage of total expenses was almost 75%. So that's a very healthy liquidity number for the business type activities, which are the enterprise funds of the city. And the overall change in net position for both governmental and business type activities was positive for fiscal year 21, I'm sorry. Yes. The general fund, I just have a couple slides here. One is just to point out the ending fund balance and the unassigned fund balance in particular, which is really the discretionary fund balance of the city. That stayed very stable at $10.9 million at the end of the year, which was almost 40% of total expenditures and transfers out. So again, that's a good metric of liquidity for the city. You'd want to see that at around 20 to 25%, so that the fact that you're at almost 40 is a very healthy number. And then this slide covers the budget compliance for the general fund specifically. Revenues were less than budget. This was primarily due to the American Rescue Plan dollars that won't be recognized until they're spent in fiscal year 22 and forward. That also correlates to the savings over budget as it relates to expenditures, which were less than budget by $3.9 million. So a positive budget variance of $1.8 million for fiscal year 21. And that's my prepared remarks, but again, a good result for the city for FY21. I do want to extend my gratitude to Jim and his staff again for all the assistance we received through the audit, and a job well done as it relates to the conclusions we obtained.
Thank you very much for that report.
Thank you.
Any comments? Okay, moving on to public comments. This section is reserved for members of the public to bring up matters of concern or opportunities for praise. Issues brought up will not be discussed in detail at this meeting. Issues will either be referred to the proper staff or will be scheduled for consideration at a future City Commission meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you're here for the Sunnyside development, we'll have time to speak later. If no comments, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Routine items are placed on the consent agenda to expedite the meeting. If the commission staff wish to discuss any item, the procedure is as follows. Pull the item from the consent agenda, vote on remaining items with one roll call vote, discuss each pulled item, and vote by roll call. Are there any items the commission would like to pull? If none, can I have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Burry?
Yes.
Commissioner Connell?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Moving on to public hearings and non-routine items. We have a second reading. Would someone please introduce 6A1?
And Mr. Mayor, if I might here just jump in briefly, and Commissioners, our firm has a conflict on these three particular items, so we've made arrangements for Lindsay Holt from Crawford, Monica, and Holt and Tavares to provide any legal advice and counsel to the City Commission here to the extent necessary on these items. So if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to switch chairs with Ms. Holt and invite her to come up here.
Yes, that's perfectly fine. Thank you.
sir.
Good evening. I'm in the hot seat now.
Yeah, good evening and welcome. Thank you, Grant. So would someone please introduce 6A1?
I'll introduce to be read by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, annexing certain real property consisting of approximately 18.5 plus minus acres, being generally located south of U.S. Highway 441 and east of Sunnyside Drive, lying in Section 33, Township 19 South, Range 25 East, Lake County, Florida, providing that said property so annexed shall be liable for its proportionate share of the existing and future indebtedness of said city, providing that such annexed property shall be subject to all laws and ordinances of said city as if all such territory had been a part of the City of Leesburg at the time of passage and approval of said laws and ordinances, providing that such annexed territory shall be placed in City Commission District 1 and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Move for approval.
Okay,
Second.
second. Comments from the commission? If none, any public comments? This,
Mike, I did want to make a couple of comments
Okay.
here. But, so I would like to remind everybody, a year and 3 months ago, this same item was on the agenda for the City Commission, and we voted, or I wasn't on the commission, but the vote that night was for the property to be brought into the city and the comp plan to be changed, but the PUD was turned down, and then there was a reversal and the property was moved back out of the city. I am not wanting to talk about item 3 yet, but I'm not for item 1 because of my position on item 3. So I will be voting no for that.
okay, and I will chime in that I'm not going to support this one either.
Is the 18.5 acres, I mean, I'm guessing it's part of the 139 acres too that's coming up?
If no other comments from the commission, any comments from the public? If none, we'll,
Good evening, Mayor. For the record, Brent Spain, Theriac in Spain, 1809 Edgewater Drive, Orlando, Florida. On behalf of the applicant, I just wanted to address the commissioner's question, is that the 18.5 acres is part of the overall 139 acres.
okay, thank you for that clarification.
And then just briefly, we would just ask, we would support the staff's recommendation of approval on the annexation and would ask for this board's support. So thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. He mentioned staff support. I do want to note that the Planning and Zoning Commission was a 7-0 vote against it. Just FYI. If there's any other public comments? Okay, if not, roll call.
Commissioner Burry,
No.
Commissioner Connell,
No.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Mayor Peterson.
No. Moving on to someone please introduce 6A2. And
Yeah,
You can help me out, Al.
barring any change there, yeah, we did sidebar with both council prior to the meeting, and the recommendation is that we need to move forward and have a vote on.
On each item?
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, will someone please introduce 6A2?
I'll introduce to be read by title only, please.
An ordinance amending the future land use map of the comprehensive plan of the City of Leesburg, changing the future land use map designation of certain property containing 18.5 plus minus acres from Lake County Rural to City of Leesburg Estate for property generally located south of U.S. Highway 441 and east of Sunnyside Drive as legally described in Section 33, Township 19 South, Range 25 East, Lake County, Florida, and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments from the commission? If none, any public comments? Dan, is the applicant doing a presentation on number 3? Okay, okay. Okay, thank you. So no comments from the public? If none, roll call.
Commissioner Connell?
No.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Burry?
No.
Mayor Peterson?
No. Would someone please introduce 6A3?
I'll introduce to be read by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, changing the zoning on approximately 139 plus minus acres from Lake County R1 Rural Residential to City PUD Planned Unit Development to allow for a single-family residential subdivision for property generally located south of U.S. Highway 441 and east of Sunnyside Drive, as legally described in Section 33, Township 19 South, Range 25 East, Lake County, Florida, and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments from the commission?
Yes, Mayor Peterson. I'd just like to make a few points as to why I'm opposed to this particular PUD. As I said before, this land was brought up for a PUD on 12/21 of 2020, and it was denied that night. That PUD was for 159 units. This PUD is requesting 164 units. Some of the rationale for why that PUD was turned down, the first and foremost thing was that the roads are substandard. There's been no substantial improvements in the roads, and we already have a tremendous amount of traffic in that area. So that was used as a reason why, we haven't seen any improvement in the roads. The second thing is that in 2004, there was an agreement between the city, the county, and the Sunnyside property owners. And the intent of that agreement was that from the three-way stop at Sunnyside, going from west to east, that portion of Sunnyside would bisect the northern section of dense development, and the southern section would be reserved for larger estate development. And this particular development is on that south side, so it is a little bit more dense than what was agreed on in that agreement. The other thing is that Sunnyside is a historically rural peninsula that's outside the current high-density development corridors, like 44 to the northeast and down 27 and 33 to the south. And we need to reserve some places for larger, nicer development. And the fourth item is that, again, I think Commissioner Peterson pointed out, the Planning Advisory Board voted 7-0 to turn this down.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Burry. Any other comments from the commission? I would comment, you know, my issue with this development is the roads. The roads just do not support this much development. I know at one time I heard the developer talk about improving the roads around the development, but, you know, it still troubles me, the roads from this development, you know, all the way to one of the major thoroughfares or highways. So I do want to explain why I'm against this development. If there's no other comments from the commission, I'll ask for public comments.
Good evening again, Mayor, fellow commissioners. Brent Spain, Theriac and Spain, 1809 Edgewater Drive, Orlando, Florida. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you this evening on behalf of the applicant. We do have a PowerPoint presentation. I would like to walk through that so it's in the record. So we appreciate the opportunity to be before you this evening. Before proceeding, there are a couple of housekeeping matters. Just so the record's clear, one, I would like to introduce an entire copy of the agenda packet into the record through the city clerk. Included in that, I would ask that the planning department's entire file on these matters be incorporated by reference into the record, along with the city's land development code and the city's comprehensive plan. I would also ask that a copy of our PowerPoint presentation, which you can see on the overhead screen, be introduced into the record. And then lastly, I have a copy of Greg Beliveau's professional resume that I will hand to Commissioner Christian so it can be introduced with the city clerk, so it's part of tonight's record as well. With those introductory matters out of the way, I'd like to start going through our presentation. Before I introduce Mr. Beliveau to go through some slides, I wanted to touch upon a couple of key points. One, a couple of these bullet points are moot because the last time we were before you all, which was I think back in December of 2020, the matters were heard together. So the first point is just distinguishing between the annexation and the plan amendment, which the council just voted on, and then the PUD approval. So there are legislative decisions and then there are quasi-judicial decisions. The first two that you have voted on this evening are legislative. They're subject to a different standard, legal standard. And then site-specific rezonings, which is the third bullet point. An example would be a PUD or a site plan. Those are what are called quasi-judicial zoning decisions, and they must be based upon, quote-unquote, competent substantial evidence. As you'll see, the applicant has the initial burden, that's us, of demonstrating through competent substantial evidence that its request complies with the local government's adopted code criteria. And I mentioned adopted code criteria, and in parens, you'll see some case law names. I'm not going to bore you with case law, but the adopted code criteria is important because a lot of times in these hearings, and I've sat up there like Ms. Holt and Mr. Watson representing local governments on land use matters, you hear a lot of very impassioned testimony from folks. But at the end of the day, it's whether or not our client has met the published criteria. One of the things that constitutes competent and substantial evidence under Florida law is a staff report. You have a staff report before you this evening with Mr. Miller's professional land use planning recommendation, and his professional recommendation was of approval for the PUD in that it was consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and consistent with the criteria in the city's land development code. And then briefly, what are some things that aren't competent substantial evidence? And these happen at all hearings, but generalized statements of opposition, something to the effect of, we just don't want this, we don't think this is a good idea. I mean, I don't envy the position you're all in, especially when you have a full room of individuals. It's a difficult place to find yourself, but these type of decisions are not popularity polls. It's not a matter of raising your hand, who's for, who's against. Again, it's really a matter of the objective code criteria. And where technical expertise is required, because this comes up quite frequently, Mayor mentioned the roads and the capacity of the roads. Traffic is an issue where expert testimony is generally required, as well as allegations of reduction in property values. And you'll see that in the third bullet point. I'm not going to read that, but that's a quote from an appellate decision where the court indicated that lay witness speculation about traffic problems, light and noise, and property value reduction and other unfavorable impacts is not competent substantial evidence under Florida law. And again, just reiterating that the criteria that you all base your decision tonight on the PUD is the published criteria. It becomes relevant in this case. I believe Commissioner Burry mentioned the Sunnyside task report in City Attorney Morrison had previously opined, and we have a slide that we'll get to, but that study report was never formally adopted by the city. It wasn't adopted into the city's comprehensive plan. In contrast to Lake County, who specifically incorporated that into their comprehensive plan, the city didn't incorporate it into its land development code either. And City Attorney Morrison had opined that that study report, which a prior commission did quote unquote approve by resolution, is not binding on this current commission. In fact, the history on this property sort of bears that out. There used to be a PUD on this site. It was approved subsequent to that Sunnyside report. With that said, I'd like to introduce Greg Beliveau. Again, I've tendered his resume into the record. I would ask that this commission, I believe you all are familiar with Mr. Beliveau, but I would ask that he be accepted as an expert in land use and land use planning. So I don't know if that requires a motion, city attorney, or if the mayor can just acknowledge Mr. Beliveau and accept his testimony as expert testimony.
I'll interject there real quickly. Because we're moving into the quasi-judicial portion, we will need to swear in. I'm sorry if I'm shirking your typical procedures here. So I'll need to swear Mr. Beliveau in, or the city clerk could do so, or anyone wishing to present the commission will be sworn today. I don't know if you prefer to do that, and anyone intending to address the commission stand all at once and be sworn. Okay. So the hearing on this present matter, 6A3, is quasi-judicial in nature. That means anyone that's wishing to make testimony or presentation to this commission, you will need to be stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in at this time. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And when you do come to the podium, when you're asked if it's part of public comment, you'll need to state your name and your address for the record before making any comment to this commission. As far as your question about an expert, Mr. Spain, what I don't have a deep knowledge is the code for this city. I would prefer that you make a brief presentation to the commission on your intended witness's qualifications as an expert, and ask the commission whether they will accept said testimony as expert testimony.
Sure, and I'm happy to do that, so I appreciate that clarification. And before I jump to qualifying Mr. Beliveau, there were a couple points that going into this presentation I'd like to clarify. One, I believe Commissioner Burry indicated that this proposal has more units than the proposal that came before you all in December 2020. Actually, several months ago, our client had submitted a revised plan that reduced the units to the exact same number as the prior plan. So it was 159 units. The major difference being that in light of citizen concerns in December 2020, the part of the project on the east side of Sunnyside Drive had been reduced to only 4 lots. But the indication that the site plan before you this evening, if it had included the property on the east side of Sunnyside, would have more overall units than the prior submittal from 2020. I just wanted to clarify that they would have been exactly the same. It had been reduced. The other thing to touch upon is in light of the commission's vote not to annex the 18.5 acres and not to adopt a plan amendment for that, obviously that property is essentially excised out and cut off of the PUD plan. So instead of having 159 units, just by default to that vote earlier this evening, the overall unit count is reduced automatically to 155 units currently proposed on the west side of Sunnyside Drive. With that said, I'll introduce Mr. Bellevaux. I'll ask some questions to qualify him and then ask that he be accepted as an expert witness. So can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Greg Bellevaux, 1162 Camp Avenue, Mount Dora.
And Mr. Bellevaux, what is your profession?
Urban planner since 1977.
And do you have any additional certifications as a urban planner?
I'm certified AICP.
And can you explain to the commission what AICP stands for?
It's a certification for certified planners, and we have to take courses and keep our certifications up every year.
And when did you become AICP certified?
Oh my God, I'm a dinosaur. It's have to be in the early 80s.
And have you ever testified before during a local quasi-judicial hearing?
Yes, several hundred, maybe even 1,000 times.
Have you been involved with proposed PUD developments before?
Yes, sir, and DRIs.
And have local governments in the Central Florida region, including Lake County, accepted you as an expert in urban planning?
Yes, sir, they have.
At this time, I'd like to tender Mr. Bellevaux as an expert in urban planning and land use.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
Good evening. I'm going to hope that this works. Okay. Whoops, wrong way. Okay, here we go. The site in question before this evening was 139 acres, but now we've been reduced to the 120 acres that's on the west side of Sunnyside Drive. The site in question is currently existing, has an existing land use that it's had since 2005. The green portion is estate and it has up to 4 units per acre. The other portion of the property is conservation and does not allow for densities. Now that the property on the east is no longer valid, we'll just ignore that portion of the exhibit. The property currently holds a PUD designation for zoning, though the existing PUD that was there that designated the PUD zoning is no longer valid. This is the revised PUD that was submitted a few months ago that had the revised number. As you notice, it showed the 4 lots on the 18 acres, which it was equivalent to the 1-to-5 zoning and future land, or 1-to-5 future land use that was there. We did that out of respect for the comments we heard originally, but now that is no longer part of the package, and therefore the 155 lots that are on the parent track are still in play, at least for a while. The 155 lots that are on the parent track are on the 120 acres, are designated on upland acres. There are 80 upland acres on that parent track of the 120. You notice that we try to be very precise in the PUD concept plan, outlining the uplands, wetlands, the uplands that were actually not wetlands. We actually exceed all other PUDs that we've actually processed from our shop that actually provided for usable uplands that were, actually we have 24.5 acres of usable uplands for the project. That's why these units are clustered, and you see other green areas that are usable by the residents for recreation purposes. We also have large buffers. We actually provided large buffers to our adjacent property owners in recognition that they are our neighbors and we wanted to be good neighbors. Our lot splits are as follows. We have 50s, 80s, and 60s. 45% are 80-foot wide lots. We have 43% 50s, and we have 12% 60s. We put the larger lots along Sunnyside Drive. This is an example of the total site with our buffers. The buffer areas we felt was something that was important to mitigate against our adjacent property owners. This is a detail of those buffer areas, and we actually provide the one to the top on the left side is the northern buffer adjacent to our northern neighbors. And you also see we have open space as well. And we only have a few lots that actually abut our adjacent property owners. There's only like a handful that abut the two houses that are there. And you'll notice there's over 300 feet between the new homes and the existing homes. On the south side, it's the same thing. We have lots, but there's a large open space between those lots and the houses to the south. Here's the detail work. You see there's 375 feet to the closest house and 365 feet to the other home. And then there's all the open space. We have over 2.4 acres of open space between those homes and the other houses. And again, on the south, we have a water retention area, and we only have a few lots against the open space that's to the south in the old grove. The environmental report, and we have Jessica here from Stillwater who was actually on the site. And we've had several comments made by our neighbors as to what we have out there. And some of them have been kind of interesting. There's been several discussions about how many eagles we have out there. It appears we have the entire southeastern eagle population residing on our property. No, not really. But we found that in actuality, we do not have an active eagle site as the last check. There was one there, and there was one registered, but there isn't one now. We do have gopher tortoises, which basically every site that you develop nowadays does have gopher tortoises. And the report does state that we will have to do a sand skink analysis. Like every other site you found, we have to do one in the springtime. So before the site's developed, we have to do a sand skink analysis. That means you throw plywood out with sticky stuff on it and see if the little buggers are out there. But that's something we have to do on almost every site that we have to do these days. Now we come to the lovely topic of the day, traffic. The initial traffic study was done in 2019 and found that we did not have a problem with our level of service, but there was some things that had to be done at the intersection. This traffic study was done based on the original plan that was done for the site. That was 219 houses. That was the original design that Dr. Coe wanted. So the traffic study was done for the 219 and found that there was no level of service issues, that Sunnyside Drive and Sleepy Hollow could handle the traffic. Well, we did an update. The update found that at the two traffic stations, Sleepy Hollow and Sunnyside, there was a slight increase since 2019 traffic counts. But the third traffic station, there was actually a decrease in traffic counts. We were kind of surprised. The 1523 was a decrease from the number in 2019. There were 1,600 and something in 2019. Also, when you do a traffic analysis based on 219 units and you decrease to 159, guess what happens? Your average daily trips decrease by 566. So when you decrease trips and you have a slight increase in counts, they more than balance out into an actual less impacts to the traffic on Sunnyside and Sleepy Hollow. So as you see there, the available trips that were available after these traffic counts was that on Sleepy Hollow, there was still an availability of 419 trips, Sunnyside Drive 570, and the other Sunnyside of 604. That was then carried over to the future traffic volumes and capacities, looking at AM and PM, as well as future road volumes with the project included. And it still showed that there was available capacity on Sleepy Hollow of 283, Sunnyside Drive of 370, and the other Sunnyside Drive where the traffic count went down of 494 trips. So lo and behold, there's plenty of capacity on Sunnyside Drive and Sleepy Hollow with our project included. The task force. Here is the original resolution that was passed. And in this resolution, everybody seems to blame Ron Stock for the interesting last addition to the resolution sentence that's on the end of this resolution, where it has that little catch-all phrase that allows the City Commission to do whatever it wants to do in the Sunnyside area. And based on that sentence, here is the opine from our previous city attorney, who we miss dearly, Fred Morrison. He explained that there is a proviso, except as otherwise determined by the City Commission. And they passed, for the first PUD, there is a substantial body of law to the effect that municipalities cannot bind its police power. And you can read the rest of it. I think you have it on your screen on your computer as well. And that was at a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in August of 2020. In December of 2020, at the City Commission meeting, he basically made the same opinion to the City Commission at that time. He responded referring to the Sunnyside Task Force. In his opinion, it is essentially the same as it was the last time it was implemented by way of resolution. The Commission has the authority, notwithstanding the task force report, to approve this. This is the desire of the Commission. In other words, up to you to pass it or not, but it's basically up to you regardless of this task force report. Sunnyside. We keep getting informed that the Sunnyside area is rural in character and that there is a land use pattern that it is strictly all 5-acre tracts or better. Well, there's been a trend in the Sunnyside area for over 30 to 40 years of past subdivisions that exist south of Sunnyside Drive. And I've got them circled here, and I keep getting informed that they don't count because they've been there too long. Well, they exist. They've existed. And these subdivisions exist, and they in fact do have pre-existing homes, and there are some vacant lots still existing in several of them, if not an abundance of them. And these vacant lots are available for people to pull building permits with. And these subdivisions, in fact, are at equal to 1 unit per acre or greater than 1 unit per acre in density. So these subdivisions do, in fact, and we're in the area that's outlined in red, and they basically encircle us to the south as well as to the north. And these subdivisions, predate us, but they can't be ignored as a pattern of development that exists in the Sunnyside area. They're there. We've added the green areas as wetlands to show that there are constraints to the development in the area. So if you take out the wetlands and you see where the pre-existing subdivisions exist, you basically see that they basically were developed where the uplands existed, intermingled where the wetlands were. So therefore, you see that there are development patterns that occurred in the Sunnyside area that predated this task force, and in a large degree predated a lot of things that were basically planning driven. They just were developed. When you look at the lots that existed, and one of the complaints I've heard is that, well, these lots aren't 50 feet wide. They're not 60 feet wide. I wasn't looking for 50-foot wide lots or 60-foot wide lots. I was looking at densities. And looking at densities, I was looking to see what is the average densities of these subdivisions. And when you focus in on these areas, and you look at the number of lots that are in these subdivisions, you see that there's a pattern that there are, in fact, subdivisions that are either at or close to 1 unit per acre or slightly over 1 unit per acre. And they exist, like I said, this one is just west of our property line. Actually, part of this subdivision was vacated. The west half still exists, and the west half of this, now that they vacated the east half, is developed at 2.2 units per acre. So, I mean, that's at the west end of Sunnyside Drive. Southwest portion of Sunnyside. Now we come to the employment information. Who do we have living in Leesburg? This is from the Urban Land Institute. The Urban Land Institute breaks out employment statistics. Right now, the City of Leesburg, and I also have the data from Northwest Lake County, but this is just Leesburg. Basically, 27% of the workforce in Leesburg is in the professional categories. 73% is in healthcare, retail, and services. Also, 36% of the workforce commutes each day into the city. That means they're commuting 30 minutes to an hour coming into the city to work. The employment that occurs here in Leesburg is basically we have more jobs than we have people in the workforce, which is a good thing because if you consider that means we have a large employment center, but we don't have enough people to feed that employment center. So they're coming in, which means we have a need for housing. Unfortunately, the need for housing is the fact that who needs the houses? Well, the thing is, people that were having the type of jobs that's being created are in the 73% category, not in the 27% category. So that's the marketplace that we're looking at, is what's happening here in Leesburg. I wish we could, build a subdivision that addressed the 500,000, the 600,000, $1 million people, but that's not who the housing market is in Leesburg. I wish it was, because Dr. Coe would build for them, but that's not who needs the housing in Leesburg. And I'll stop with the conclusion.
So as Mr. Bellevue indicated, that concludes our initial presentation. We would ask to reserve time for rebuttal, depending on the public comments this evening. But again, we would respectfully ask that the commission approve the PUD, obviously with the stipulation, the condition that it doesn't include the property to the east of Sunnyside Drive. In light of the commission's earlier votes this evening, that would reduce the overall lot count further down to 155. We respectfully submit, based on not only our presentation, but the staff report and the agenda packet, that the PUD is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, it's consistent with the city's land development code, and it's compatible with the surrounding pattern of development. And as Mr. Bellevue indicated, the road capacity is there. It was, if anything, the traffic study evaluated greater impacts than this project would have. And so when you account for the lower number of units, and then even we went a step further and updated all the traffic numbers, it still demonstrates that there's adequate capacity on the roadways. So again, we stand ready to answer any questions the commission might have and would ask for some rebuttal time. So thank you.
I did have one
Go ahead,
question, if
go ahead.
I could. Those neighborhoods that you were pointing out with the density, how many of those are in the city limits of Leesburg?
I believe probably 2.
Which ones?
The ones on Sunnyside, I think there's one on, let me get the, I think the Meadows at Sunnyside is. I think that's the only one.
Which one?
Meadows at Sunnyside.
Okay.
You're saying that's the only one in
Yeah,
the city
I believe
limits?
that's the only one.
Okay, thank you.
And so all the other ones predate, like I said, they all predate any of the rules and regulations, but they do exist. So they're there. And they do establish a pattern.
I have a couple of questions. Any other commissioners? You referenced if I heard you right, you said the traffic is down from 2019 to 2020?
No, one traffic station was down.
I'm sorry, can you clarify that?
One traffic station was down.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 were up, 1 was down.
What do you think the reasoning is for that?
Well, it's one thing is when we looked at when the traffic counts were done by the county, COVID dropped all the stations counts went down with COVID, and then they start climbing again. But for some reason, the third traffic station, which is basically at the intersection of Sunnyside coming down from the south and Sunnyside coming in from the west, or from the east coming into the west. And for some reason, that station went down from 16-something to 15-something. Maybe they went up Tomato Hill, maybe they went up Sleepy Hollow. I don't know, because those other stations only had, like I said, marginal increases in counts. But that's what the numbers say from the county, that those only went, that one station dropped. And we've had surprises on other projects where we've gone and had traffic counts shown in other communities where numbers are not going up as fast as people thought they would be. Cherry Lake Drive and Lady Lake, Rolling Acres. I mean, some of those are not going up as high as people presume or perceive that they're going up. So the numbers are the numbers.
And the basis of my question was I was suspecting that the numbers were down in 2020 over COVID. So I guess in summary, I would say it's fair to say the numbers are, I mean, when I go out to Sunnyside, I used to live out there. When I go back out there, I see a steady increase. So I guess my point is I would think the traffic is up in 2021.
Well, the count was 2021.
Okay, I thought you said 2020.
No,
Okay.
it's 2021.
Okay. But I just want to be clear on the impact from COVID. My other question, just for the benefit of the crowd, can you explain the width of the roads that people would be traveling on, starting at the subdivision to, I guess, either 440?
Well, I have another handout that we're going to go through when we get to rebuttal that's going to go through some of that information.
Okay, and you're going to address the width of the roads at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and because there's some interesting trends out there about how the width changes, and it sort of changes where it gets to our project.
Okay. If you want to talk about it later, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
Additional comments from the public?
Good evening. Zach Broom, Bowen and Schroth, 600 Jennings Avenue. I've been retained by some of the local property owners. I want to start first by addressing one issue that's kind of been glossed over. As was addressed earlier, you had a legislative decision before you about whether to annex 18 acres. You denied that. So one of the things that came forward was, well, there's less units. There's also 18 less acres. And the reason that's relevant is they had reduced the plan to 4 units on that 18 acres. So when we're talking about density for this project, you also took it from 155 or 160 units on that total acreage to now the 120. So that also raised the gross and net densities for this project. And the gross and net density is also very relevant because I believe I heard correctly, there's only 80 acres of upland buildable property. That means you're talking about close to 2 units per acre, where without a PUD, they just wouldn't have the lawful ability to build in what I'm assuming are jurisdictional wetlands. So the reason that's relevant is I'm going to start with your own code. Section 25-274. A planned unit development relies on the underlying zoning district to establish basic development rights, including permitted uses, permitted density, and permitted intensity. And the reason that's relevant is much is made of the fact that that resolution about the Sunnyside task force included that proviso that, oh, but we can also change this. The provision they didn't cite is under the same resolution. It explicitly says that when staff is reviewing a development application, they have to take into account the Sunnyside task force in rendering that staff report they relied upon and saying there's competent substantial evidence. So if the council were to vote to withdraw or cancel that resolution, that'd be perfectly fine. My understanding is that never happened. So the application before you tonight, the staff report before you tonight, didn't take that into consideration. That's number one. Number two, going back to this PUD, the annexation of the property at issue was done explicitly in the ordinance of annexation, that the annexation of the 120 acres that we're here about tonight was explicitly subject to the planned unit development conditions that the city imposed back then, the 2005, and that's on the instrument that Mr. Morrison prepared, recorded at OR Book 3059, page 2133, and it explicitly incorporates the PUD conditions. So if you go to that exhibit, the PUD conditions, it lays out that the residential development of the project being annexed would be a maximum of 120 units at a gross density of 1 unit per acre with a net density of 1.7 units per acre. They're coming in saying our underlying zoning for this PUD application is PUD, but that same PUD explicitly lays out their densities and intensities that inform your review of the current application in front of you. And it has a much lower density and much lower intensity than they're proposing tonight. The document also talks about if they failed to get that PUD implemented within 24 months, the default fallback was estate. Again, a much lower density than they're currently asking for tonight. That is, and I believe there was testimony about what rural estate would be in the city limits. Again, it is not a higher density than 1-to-1. And they're way over that on gross and net intensity. Going on, there was discussion about these widths and the lots and why much to do is made about them. The reason for that is, again, as we just went through, PUD is not analyzed in a vacuum. It's not whatever the applicant feels like. That is still tied back to what is their underlying standard, what is the underlying intensity. And in rural estate, RE1, which is what their PUD would default to under the 2005 PUD, lot width is 100 feet and lot depth is 150. Even if you go down to R1A, it's 70 by 100. You have to get into straight R1 where you get 50 to 90. So again, these lot widths, these lot uses, a PUD is not, and it is very important for this consideration, a PUD is not whatever the developer feels like. It has to be tied back to something. And their current underlying zoning, the PUD, has much lower intensities and much lower densities than they're asking you for tonight. And even if you were to say, well, that PUD expired, that PUD's language said as part of annexation, if this PUD expires, we go to rural estate. So when you're hearing all this about the facts and the figures and that there's evidence or testimony of an expert witness, you have to tie it back to what your own code requires for a project like this. And what you heard from their expert is of the 120 acres they're asking to develop, only 80 are buildable, only 80 are uplands. So they're asking you tonight, to be very clear, for 155 units on 80 buildable acres. That is not consistent with your current code. It is not consistent with the PUD that was passed, which is the underlying zoning. It wasn't consistent with their annexation. And again, leaving aside the council's ability to just ignore the resolution approving the code, of the Sunnyside Task Force, staff should have reviewed the Sunnyside Task Force densities, traffic studies, et cetera, when rendering the staff report on this project. So, going to what we're at tonight, the 18 acres is gone. It was not annexed, it's not here. They're left with the 120, and they're asking you for almost 2 units per acre net density. And the road issue goes to your own concurrency. A lot of jurisdictions allow you to simply deal with the roads later, and we've heard that before about kicking the can on this project. They cannot do that here. Concurrency has to be met for you to approve this PUD. Now, there were a lot of numbers thrown up there. One of the things, though, it sounded like is I believe there was a 566 estimated trips. And I could be wrong, but I believe he said 566 additional trips. I'm curious how there were 400 remaining trips on one of the traffic studies now, but by 2024, that number goes up, even with the addition of the 566. Because otherwise, it sounds like if it's 566 trips and there was only, I think, 440 left, that seems like it is more trips than your traffic concurrency would allow for. So, again, maybe I just didn't read the slide right. But going back to the big picture, which is more of what I'm here for, what they've applied for is inconsistent with your code. A PUD is not whatever you want. It has to be consistent with the code. And based on what they've put up there, it's not. So unless you throw out the PUD they're here under, the annexation ordinance that they're here under, and the entire history with this property, it's not appropriate. Thank you.
Murray Tucker, 6839 Tuscaloosa, Leesburg. If I could ask 1 or 2 questions. One, I'd like to ask the traffic engineer a question. Do we have the traffic engineer? We don't have a traffic engineer. Makes it hard to argue, but all right. His goings were 675 trips an hour. That's 1 car every 5.33 seconds. All of y'all up there have been to this property. 2 blind S-curves, a blind hill up, an area where you can see about 100 feet to see if the car's coming up the hill on the other side, to a piece of road that's less than 15 foot wide, with concrete curbing on each side. So I'm curious if all that was taken into account when it was done. Number 2, I didn't see anything about house sizes. Okay, so it's still, so a 50-foot lot is 1,600 square foot, am I correct? Okay. That's what I thought, that's what I remembered. Is that 1,600 total under roof, or is that heated and air conditioned? Heated air. Okay. I'm just bringing this up because a few of the comps that were brought up, and I think we're getting into a blurry area here when we're talking about density. And our biggest challenge has been that this is not a consistent subdivision with surrounding areas. Because, like, one of the comps you gave was the estates of Sunnyside. Arbormere. You know how many 50-foot lots are in Arbormere? None. They range from ½ acre to 0.77 acres. And this was development before the task force. They still went with the bigger. The Meadows at the Y of Sunnyside, 0.7 to 1.25 acres. Not a single 50-foot lot anywhere. To the north, we have Sunny Ridge Court. And if you would like, I have a PowerPoint. I'm trying to save time. If you all would like me to bring up the PowerPoint and show you this stuff, nod at me. I'll have them bring it up. If not, I'll keep talking.
No, you're doing good. Thank you.
The state's, Sunny Ridge Court. All those lots are over an acre. And they're deed restricted to anywhere between 2,300 and 3,000 feet heated air minimum size. The estates of Sunnyside, which is to the north, those are 5-acre lots, deed restricted to 3,800 square feet, heated and air conditioned. Said Arbormere has 0.5 to 0.77, Meadows 0.7 to 1.25. Even Shady Dells, that was platted in the 1920s, that I know I'm not supposed to say it counts, but it counts. There's not a 50-foot lot in there either. And that's our big rub here. A 50-foot lot subdivision does not fit into this area. That many houses does not fit. I don't care. I know you're not going to put 675 cars now on that road and not kill somebody. You have less than 100 feet vision a lot of ways. You go around the corner, someone's on a bike, somebody's walking. They're going to get hit. Approving this is putting somebody in danger. That's just common sense. And if I saw somebody staggering out of the bar to their car and I didn't call and do something about it, and they hurt one of y'all's family, I couldn't live with myself. I ask you the same from y'all. Please don't put us in a predicament or in a position where we're going to get somebody hurt. I've done a notice to appear. I have a PowerPoint. If it's required, I'll be happy to come back up and go over more of the stuff, but I think you get my gist, and I want to try to keep this meeting going.
Just a point of order, Mayor, since we're in a quasi-judicial hearing, and you can certainly confer with the city attorney, but I have a couple of questions for Mr. Tucker.
I have no objection to you cross-examining the witness. I think it's appropriate as it's quasi-judicial. I don't know if you're waiting for me, Mr. Spain.
Mr. Tucker, I just have a few questions. You have made some testimony regarding transportation. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Are you a transportation engineer?
No, I'm not. That's why I asked if one was here, but there's not, so.
Do you have any formal training in transportation engineering?
Nope.
Are you a land use planner?
Nope.
Do you have any professional training in land use planning?
No, I do not.
No further questions.
But if I may rebut once again here, I've been watching a lot of this since all this got started. You know, when the last big number 2 road project came up, the traffic engineer was here, the planner was here, the actual developer was here. And when it went through planning and zoning, they raised questions. People were there to answer, change things, talk with the property owners. And it got done. It got changed several times. It actually got in front of the commission here, and y'all didn't like some things. And they met with the people on number 2 road. Everybody was there. Same thing with the Ostrander Roebuck PUD. Everybody was there, talked to, commission. We don't like this, it's too big. And they changed it. I mean, it's like the inmates running the asylum here. Nope, there's nobody here that can do anything, change anything. It's just like, well, here's what you're getting. So that's why I have a little frustration with.
Are there any other public comments? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Mark Arney. I reside at 7393 Sunnyside Drive in Leesburg. I want to first let you know that I'm not an expert, but I think my opinion counts since I'm right on the road, right between those 2 curves. And they're dangerous right now. You have some construction going on with a few of the houses further down Sunnyside, and literally when you have these big trucks come around that curve, if you're not careful and you don't stop well ahead of it, they're going to come into your lane. And in the morning, you have a lot of people that are jogging, walking, as was mentioned previously. This is just an accident ready to happen. One thing that I want to make clear that I don't think has been is, yes, along the peripheral of the development, the roads will be improved. There will be gutters, there will be sidewalks. However, they end where the development ends, on both sides. So what that is going to create, and actually my house would have a road that's developed, but it will create bottlenecks on each side. And one of the worst bottlenecks is going to be when you're going downhill, when you go past Camp Horizon towards the lake, and you go to the crest, and then as you come down, for those of you that live on Sunnyside, you'll know that that turns into almost a one-lane road. There will be bottlenecks there. There'll be some accidents. So that's something to take in consideration. The other thing is the comments that were made, and I've been following this project for a long time, is that those roads aren't being, the other parts of that road, including that one lane, aren't being planned to be improved. In fact, Lake County has, I think, pretty much made a statement that they're not going to improve that. So that means you're going to have that bottleneck. And for the record, when I testified before this commission last year, I left a bunch of documents that showed that when you have a concept plan, that's what it is. It's a concept plan. And that concept plan gives the petitioner a lot of latitude to make changes. So you might approve it, and if you go to like phase 2 or phase 3, on each side of 5 feet, so that's 10 feet between the house. And it's right there in the documentation. Problem is, you need a you need a magnifying glass to read the print. I had to blow the thing way up, and I have a pretty sophisticated Adobe Photoshop program. So anyway, this is a disaster ready to happen, and that's it for my testimony. Thank you very much for your time.
How y'all doing tonight? My name is James Littleton. I live at 31620 Sun Valley Road. That is a private drive. It is on the first curve. And I can't count how many cars did make that curve. One last year didn't make it, went 50 foot into the woods and took out Anderson's mailbox. That was just last year. More cars making that curve. Consider a school bus and a truss truck making that curve. Somebody's not going to make it. So, I mean, traffic, just equipment getting in there to do this job is going to be a real nightmare. And that's all I've got to say.
Any other public comments? I know the developer wants to come back up and speak, but any other comments? Okay.
David Hedrick, 7146 Sunnyside Drive, just down from that curve everybody's talking about. Thank you for letting me get up here and speak. As of today, I just about hit a school bus coming around that curve. It comes across the road. It has to come in both lanes. And if you're there and you don't see it in time, it gets very close. But I wanted to consider a couple other things. Your speech today or your talk today, very good. You touched a lot of good points and stuff like that. You pulled on a few shirt strings and everything about how we can get more people in here and help the community out. But it comes down to somebody's going to make a profit. The people around there aren't making profits. We have to live there, okay? I have been there for 1.5 years now. I've seen one development go in, one going in, and I've watched the habitat disappear. In fact, we have one gentleman on I can't remember the name of the road, where they're doing the development now. He's actually putting dirt into the Everglades back inside there. He's actually we watched him do it. Okay, he's actually removing the habitat, and the animal stress out there is getting worse. We can see it around the neighborhood. You talked about only having one bald eagle to worry about. There should be about 10 or so. We should not be getting rid of our habitat and losing our animals out there. You have a jewel out there, and you want to make it a tight, dense area so somebody can make a profit. I do understand, though, presently in today's Congress, there is a bill in line. They're going to try to sneak it through with an attachment where they're going to take the zoning out of the state's hands. The federal government now wants to do all the zoning for everybody. I hope it doesn't pass. I hope it gets kicked out. But I'm very fearful that this state is going to turn into something like California, which I escaped from. Okay? So thank you very much for letting me get up here and speak. You all have a nice day.
Yes, ma'am, you're fine.
I'm Ruth Ann Blum, and I live at 417 Sunnyside. And I've been following this project as long as we've been here and known that it's existed. So my question has always been an independent traffic study. I realize that these gentlemen have had the county, that is what I believe, the county did the last traffic study? No? Okay. Well, we still need an independent traffic study. Anybody can say what they're prompted to say. And I just question the traffic study, period. I think that either the commission or the county, which apparently, from what I've heard, they've disavowed any feelings whatsoever with the roads, but somebody ought to run an independent traffic study. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments? Greg, did you want to speak again?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Again, Brent Spain, Theriac and Spain, for the record. Before Mr. Belvo comes up and addresses some of the traffic comments, I did want to walk through a few of the remarks that were made. One, the council for some of the neighbors made some comments about density and you know, in this arena, depending which jurisdiction you're in, it could be net density, gross acreage, and depending how you calculate that, you get a different number. He keeps saying net, but what he didn't indicate is that the city calculates density based on gross acreage. So the suggestion that somehow we're hiding the ball or doing something else inappropriate because, well, the net density is going to be X. Your code requires density be calculated on the gross acreage, and we're complying with that criteria. There were comments regarding the prior PUD from back in 2005. Throughout this process, back in 2020, City Attorney Morrison had opined that that PUD essentially was irrelevant because it's expired. The only reason it's relevant is from a historical standpoint, the timing of its adoption shows that the task study report is not per se binding on the commission, because the commission that adopted that resolution was the same commission, I believe, that approved that PUD. Same with the annexation agreement that was referenced. That annexation agreement was fully performed. If you read it, the city in there says we're not obligated to annex the property. Well, you all did annex the property. The parent track is in the city, and we're sort of in between a rock and a hard place because we're trying to be able to develop a site that's in the city, and there's a lot of stringent requirements being imposed on my client, one of which is to run central water and sewer lines to the property, which is extremely cost prohibitive. So the suggestion that, well, they should develop at 1 to 3 or 1 to 5, I'd submit that there aren't any projects that I'm aware of at 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 that are running central water and sewer lines to them, and there's a reason for that. And just regarding the density as a whole, I know you all are familiar with 1,000 Friends of Florida. I was involved in a highly contested project in Orange County where the Thousand Friends of Florida policy director testified that 2 dwelling units per acre is actually rural in character. This is coming from the Thousand Friends of Florida, which is a steward of smart growth and the protection of rural areas. There were remarks about the size of the lots in a PUD, and I believe there was a reference to your code about how you have to look at the underlying zoning district. And the section that was referenced actually has to do with planned development overlays. That reference is relying upon the underlying zoning district to establish the basic development rights. We're a proposed PD, a planned development. And the city's planner testified at the P&Z meeting. I'm sure he could confirm it this evening, but it's in the minutes that are in the agenda packet because that same issue was brought up at the P&Z hearing, and Mr. Miller confirmed that there are no minimum lot size requirements as the neighborhood attorney indicated. Same thing goes with the square footage. There was a mention about square footages, and 1,600 square feet isn't big enough for this area. One, I'm not aware of any requirement per se in the code, and maybe there is one imposing square footage requirements in order to ensure compatibility. But there are minimum square footage requirements in the PD. They vary depending upon how big the lot is, depending if it's a 50-foot lot, 60, or an 80-foot lot, the square footage goes up. But again, I'm not aware of that being a published criteria. And frankly, depending upon the end user on a house, I mean, there are many people who don't need a 2,000, 2,800, 3,000, 3,500 square foot house. I certainly don't need a 4,000 square foot house. There's a strength in this city having a diversified housing options. And quite frankly, there's nothing wrong with the 1,600 square foot house. There was a reference to someone's going to make a profit. Well, I'll just keep my remarks brief on that. I think everybody in this room strives to make a profit in whatever they're doing, whether they're working at a corner store or they're an attorney like myself or a doctor or a school teacher or the like. And we all stood up at the beginning of this meeting and did the Pledge of Allegiance. That's a founding principle I would submit of this country, is that, hey, if you work hard, do your best, anything's possible in this country. And the suggestion that, someone may make a profit off this, I think is a bit misplaced. Mr. Bellevue can comment upon it, but there was testimony regarding curves in the area. One of the huge wins of this project is one of those curves borders our client's project, and he can pull up a slide that shows it. But as part of this project, we're dedicating additional right-of-way in order to soften that curve. So it actually improves the situation that will not be improved absent our client's contribution in that regard. And lastly, there was a remark about traffic studies. And I know you all are very familiar with this, but I'm an attorney, right? I don't go out and do the traffic study. A licensed transportation engineer does that traffic study. And it gets submitted to the city, it gets reviewed by the city, it gets reviewed by the county in light of the fact that they're county roadways. Nothing happened different in this instance. That traffic study was reviewed and it was signed off on, and there are conditions in the proposed PUD ordinance about traffic improvements we're going to have to make along our frontage, and we certainly are agreeable to those. It's going to improve a situation out there that absent this development, as a resident indicated, is not going to get improved. So it's a win-win, but the suggestion that the traffic study is flawed simply because a layperson doesn't agree with it or thinks an outside third party should look at it, one that has a fiduciary duty to review the traffic studies, and that's your staff and the county staff. So at this time, I'd like to bring Craig Bellevue back up to walk through some of the traffic concerns, and then we'll have our closing remarks.
You're being handed several slides dealing with Sunnyside Drive, and they outline basically photos taken from Sunnyside, from where Sleepy Hollow intersects Sunnyside The first slide is the view going east, and then they progress going east. And what they show is, in several of the locations that I've done PUDs or developments, they don't have to be PUDs, they could be subdivisions. What you'll notice is, in my experience, Sunnyside Drive is one of the better county roads that I've encountered. I'm going to hear chuckles behind me, but it is. I mean, look out at number 2 road, south of you. Take a look at that one. Compare it to Sunnyside Drive. I go in some of the roads that I've encountered out in Mineola, or out in Groveland, or out in Mascot, some of those county roads. And you take a look at Sunnyside, you've got 66-foot of right-of-way out here. You've got pavement widths, you have a striped center line. I mean, honestly, you have a striped center line. Drive around the county. I drive around the county all the time. There are a lot of county roads that have no striped center lines. You're blessed with a road that has striped center lines. The pavement condition on Sunnyside is actually very good compared to some of the road conditions that are around Lake County. I mean, even Sean Parks is aware of how much behind they are in maintaining county roads. This road is actually in fair, and I think good condition compared to a lot of the county roads that are out there that are not in as good a shape as Sunnyside. Let's continue down the slide. Go to the next slide, and that is Sunnyside heading east.
Can I ask you something, Greg?
Yeah.
At the last meeting, I thought the county, do they rate
Yes.
the roads?
Yes.
So what is Sunnyside rated?
I haven't asked Seth what they rate, but the interesting thing is when they repaved Sunnyside, did you notice which section they repaved? No. They repaved the eastern section just at the intersection of where the two Sunnysides met. They did the eastern loop and the southern loop. They didn't do this loop.
Right.
And they came around the bottom and they stopped. And now when we get to the last slide, I think you'll see why. Because when you look at this segment, the segment we're looking at here, and the segment that was going in the other direction, that other direction segment was in worse condition this segment was. But let's keep going, and you'll look at what you'll see. You just keep flipping the pages, and as you'll go through, because you'll come to the first curve. The first curve has a very good line of sight. You have a very good line of sight going through, so you see oncoming traffic from basically both directions. You then go, oh, I've got more copies. Here, Jessica, if you want to we'll give Mr. Tucker a copy and his attorney. You give Mr. Tucker another one, you can give his attorney a copy. Then you're heading south towards the second curve. As you can see, the road condition and the shoulders are actually, they're not that frayed, they're in solid shape, and you head to the second curve. Again, when you get to the second curve, again, you have good line of sight. And you're heading to the second curve, you have line of sight heading in both directions. Now you're heading more east, heading towards our site. And there's something that happens as you're heading towards our site. The pavement width stays consistent. You have the center stripe. Then you get to the next slide. And you see there's a little arrow that I've drawn in the right-of-way, on the right. And you notice the change in pavement texture. See that? That's at our property line. Notice how the pavement changes? At this point, it actually gets narrower. It gets narrower, and the curve has absolutely no line of sight. You can't see behind, you can't see around the curve. This is where our property has talked to the county about providing more right-of-way so that the curve can be less acute, so that the curve can bend more to the right, so that the curve can be gradual, so that this curve line can actually be rounded, so when people come from the south heading in this direction, or from this direction heading south, that they can see around the corner better, and that the road can be improved. In fact, our requirement is, by the comments by Lake County, is that we have to improve Sunnyside from this point, heading south, around the corner, heading due south, and you see the pavement starts to crack, and I noticed, looking at it from taking a site visit, it's actually in worse condition than this is. Then if you look at the last slide, and I have 2 X's, you can tell the difference in the asphalt types on this slide very acutely. Where the X is on the top left and looking towards on the right, just past the X on the right, the asphalt changes again a few feet off the X to the right, how the asphalt shifts again. The asphalt condition in this stretch is where the asphalt is in the worst shape. That is entirely along our property line between those 2 X's. According to the conditions in the PUD and the conditions by Lake County, we have to make improvements along the entire stretch where these 2 X's are. The previous property owner to Dr. Coe dedicated additional right-of-way between these 2 X's on the property side that's on the west, or on the east. He was going to donate property on the other side, or where the 18 acres was, as part of the PUD conditions on the 18 acres, so that there'd be more right-of-way on the 18 acres side as well, but now that 18 acres is off the table. But we are still under requirements to donate. There is existing donations on this side, on the side where the 120 acres is. So that's already, as a donation, existing. So that's already there, it's already in the records, and it's already shown on the county records that right-of-way is already there. So we're on the hook, if approved, to improve Sunnyside from the X to the X on, well, not to that X, because I put that X there assuming the 18 acres was coming in. That X has to move up to the north side of that existing plat that's south of us. That X is on the south end of the 18 acres. And we have to make improvements to our entrance, right turn lane in, to our entry feature coming in off of Sunnyside, and the softening of the curve. So that stretch is going to be improved by us, equal to or better than the stretch of Sunnyside approaching us from the east or the west. Now, just below us, where that asphalt changes from that light gray to the darker gray, just a few more 100 feet is where the new pavement starts to hook down and around to Sunnyside, looping back to the intersection. The comment that there seems to be a misconception on the number that I gave on the 566. The 566 was a reduction, not an increase. When you go from 219 units to 159, now 155, that reduces traffic, not increases traffic. It reduces it, and therefore we have less impacts on Sunnyside, not more impacts on Sunnyside. So we have less trips than we had before. So that's a given because we have less units. So that was one reason why we have more trips available on Sunnyside and Sleepy Hollow after this change than we had before. There was also discussions on what's our density, gross versus net. Now with 120 acres, our gross density is 1.29, not the 1.1 it was before. So we did bump it to 1.29. If you use the 80 acres only, but Leesburg has always used gross. It's never used net. It never has. Every PUD you've approved All the ones you've approved in the past, all the ones you did south, all the ones you've done everywhere has been a gross. That's the way you've always done it. Ours would be at 1.29. If you use it as a net, we'd be at 1.9. We're still under 2. So that's it. Those are the responses to the comments that have been made. And I find it also interesting that when Google took all these pictures, take a look. How many cars are there? When Google took all those pictures, there's 2.
Question for you, Greg. You made a comment that you said the roads are not frayed. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if you look at Sunnyside, the quality of the asphalt, if you look at it, you don't see that many cracks. You don't see potholes. You don't see, you see a road that's in pretty good condition.
So my question is, when I look, I thought you meant like the edges
Well, the
of
shoulders,
the road, how people drive in the grass.
Yes. Well, that
That's
shoulder.
not frayed or.
Well,
I mean,
that
that's not
shoulder's
what
in
that means.
pretty good shape, considering if you look at the shoulder where it's in front of the Dr. Coe's property, that shoulder is in very bad shape. That shoulder there where Sunnyside is.
Well, I understand. Yeah, that's real bad. But
Yeah,
when you started at picture number 1,
that's not bad.
That's not bad.
No, it's not.
Okay. Well, it's people driving off the road, regardless, right? Okay.
But it doesn't look like it's that beat up. Honestly, it doesn't. You take a ride around county.
Okay.
Your road's in very good shape.
Okay.
Greg, earlier I asked a question on the width of the roads. Would you clarify the width of the roads you're proposing for your development and the other roads in Sunnyside that they'll be driving on?
Well, the roads we're required to build is meeting city specifications, which are 50-foot right-of-way within the PUD. And so we have to meet city specs. The overlay that we'll have to meet is county specs, and we'll have to meet basically, I think we will overlay will have to be 10-foot travel lanes or 12 with 24 foot of pavement. Where it is existing, it varies from what we could tell for anywhere from 18 feet, 7 to 18, 10 inches, up to, in some places, almost 19. So it all varied.
Secondly, I heard a lot of traffic numbers. Can you help me understand the traffic numbers before and after this development?
Okay, let's go back. Where's the back?
You know where I'm going with that. I'm just trying to understand the impact on the roads.
Oh, okay, here it is. Nope. No, we went too far. Okay, let me have, you should have this on your screen. Rather than trying to squint. This shows that in the top, whoops, where'd it go? The top volumes are before the project. The bottom chart is after the project. The top volumes show that Sleepy Hollow has a LOS adopted capacity of 675 trips. And it shows that in future years, in the adopted future years 2024, has an available capacity of 325. That's without Sunnyside PUD. Then you go down to the next chart, and then it shows with our project, you go across with available capacity after us. The available capacity is 283. That means after our project impacts Sleepy Hollow, there's still 283 trips available on Sleepy Hollow. The same thing goes for Sunnyside Drive. There's future volume available of 527. After us, there's 370. And the third station, which is the one that had the reduction, there was 598. After the Sunnyside project, there's 494. So that's where it shows before the project and after the project.
I guess my question is still just two simple numbers. What is the traffic today, and what would be the traffic, say, 2024? I'm just looking for two numbers.
Well, the
I'm
problem
just
is
trying to compare the two.
Well, the problem is the traffic studies are based on peak hour and not total volume. So these are based on peak hour.
Okay.
So that's why you're seeing these numbers versus the total volume of 2,000 something versus our reduction number of 566 taken off. They do everything based on peak hour. So the peak hour is what's evaluated. And the peak hour is evaluated in two different directions, and that's why the math gets the way it is. So you always look at what's available capacity, and is the available capacity a plus or a minus? And if it's a minus, that means you've blown the capacity and there's no capacity left. If the number is an excessive number, that means there's capacity available for the next project. So now we now know that after our PUD, if it's approved, then another project or the vacant lots can be developed without a problem. There's level of service available for them to be built. We haven't hurt the road system from a level of service component in a negative way. So from a standpoint of what the 675, there's still 283 trips available out of the 675.
Okay.
And that's a lot.
So you're saying after the development, the estimated traffic is 675 cars?
No. The 683 is what's left. 675 is the adopted level of service.
Okay.
In other words, the county says, when you get to 675 cars, stop. You can't add any more cars to Sleepy Hollow Road. You've hit your maximum number of cars. You can't go any further. During a year. The AM and PM. It's AM is, traffic guys know these are, I think it's 7 to 8:30. PM is 4:30 to 6. So school buses are already done by the time? No, 7 o'clock is when the school buses are out. In the afternoon? Oh, in the afternoon, yes. Well, one of the high school buses are still out. No, middle school. Middle school buses are still out.
Greg, do you know how many homes divert directly onto Sleepy Hollow?
I don't. These guys all do this based on, they have models in the computers. And these traffic guys do everything through modeling systems. And that's why, like Mr. Spain mentioned, is that these traffic guys do things, and they run these models through, the computers spit them out, and they send them to other professionals to evaluate them, and they come up with these. Well, I don't confess to them about how they come out with them, but they come out with them. They're reviewed by the city, the county. Some jurisdictions send them to the MPO, some send them to the Regional Planning Council, some sent them, whoever, but they are reviewed by other professionals that look at them, and they then determine the validity, and that's what was done here.
So, yeah, yeah.
I spent 35 years in logistics. A traffic study is only as good as the information put in, because it is computer model and algorithms. Okay, so did you give everybody in the redevelopment 2 cars? Or what?
I have no idea what they gave them. I'm just telling you.
That's the point I'm making here.
Ma'am, please go to the microphone if you're going to, please go to the microphone if you're going to speak.
That's the point I'm making, is that we're taking this study based on what the petitioner is saying, and we as residents need more clarity. An algorithm traffic study is pretty accurate, number one, but it makes a difference of what algorithms you put in, what criteria you put in to measure the study. Also, on Sleepy Hollow, currently, there is a new subdivision being built. And so was that traffic taken into consideration on this traffic study? I believe we truly need an independent traffic study that encompasses the criteria that makes the most sense for the Sunnyside residents existing, let alone the safety of the people that will be moving into this development should it pass. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, I'll just have our wrap-up comments, but briefly on the remarks regarding the traffic study. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, this is an accepted practice. You all have seen it. The county, whether it's the county reviewing it, the MPO, the city staff, there's a methodology that the traffic engineers have to submit. Typically, they do that in advance. The methodology gets signed off on. The traffic study comes in. I've done many projects where if there's an issue with the traffic study, or they want another intersection analyzed, or they think something is understated or overstated, those folks reviewing it are professionals. They flag it. They don't have some vested interest in the project. That's what their job is at the county and at the city. They're guardians for the local governments. So again, there is I guess, to the extent people think it's madness or fuzzy math, there's a method to the madness, and there are folks that are very highly skilled in doing it, and they can see if the numbers are off or if the methodology utilizes inaccurate. But again, our traffic study, as Mr. Bellevue walked through, indicates that the level of surface is available. If anything, our traffic study overstated the impact of this development originally because it was at a much higher density and unit count. So when you subtract out the fact that the project from when that traffic study was done reduced units, and then even updating it for current numbers, we're still well below tripping that road out there for level of service reasons. So in closing, I would just sort of circle back to what I indicated in the introductory remarks is, under Florida law, the burden's on the applicant to come forward and demonstrate that it meets your published criteria to get its project approved through competent substantial evidence. Competent substantial evidence includes staff report, staff testimony, it includes expert testimony, which you heard this evening from Mr. Bellevue. Again, as I indicated, I don't envy the position that city council members are in, or county commissioners for that matter, because matters get emotional. They live in the neighborhood. I understand that. I represent neighbors at times. I represent developers, and I represent local governments. But at the end of the day, your role is, does this project meet the city's published criteria? And I would respectfully submit that this evening you haven't heard any competent substantial evidence that we don't meet the city's published criteria. You've heard remarks, and they're completely legitimate to the folks that are expressing them, that they don't like this project or they prefer the property to stay in its current vacant state for as long as they live in the area. And I understand that, but that's not part of the published criteria for y'all to review. And we've demonstrated on the densities that we are compatible, we would submit. We've demonstrated on the traffic that the road capacity is there. And in fact, to the extent there's any additional improvements that need to be made to Sunnyside Drive, because only a portion of the loop has been done, that sort of missing connection, almost 90% plus of that is going to be completed by our developer's project if this is approved. And it's Section 8 of the proposed PUD ordinance that holds our clients' feet to the fire on those transportation improvements. So again, I didn't hear one individual cite a specific code criteria that we don't comply with. I didn't hear a policy from the comprehensive plan. I understand that folks might not like the project, but that's not the standard that you all apply in this role as a quasi-judicial decision maker. You essentially have your judge hat on in this type of proceeding. This isn't a legislative proceeding where you have much more discretion and you can just say, hey, we don't want to expand in the eastern direction or southern direction of the city, or we don't want to enter into this contract with the service provider. This is a QJ hearing, quasi-judicial. Did we ring the bell? And I submit that we did. The closest someone came to citing a code criteria was the Neighbors Council, who cited just the general PD code section, just generally. And as I indicated in my rebuttal, the section he read refers to a PD overlay district, which is not what we are seeking approval of. We're seeking a plan development approval, which is a standalone zoning classification in and of itself. So we respectfully ask for your approval. We understand you exercise your legislative discretion not to annex the 18.5 acres, not to approve the plan amendment on that property. But the remainder, the parent track, is already in the city. And we've come before you all with a revised PD plan. We added buffers that certain commissioners asked for the last go around in December of 2020. We put them between our project and the existing residential, which Mr. Bellevue walked through. You saw that most of our lots don't even abut any existing residential. They abut conservation or wetland. And the ones that do abut are very limited, and they're hundreds and hundreds of feet away. So again, respectfully, I'd ask for your approval this evening so we can move forward and bring a wonderful project to the city of Leesburg. So thank you for your time and patience. I know it's been a long hearing, so thank you.
No, thank you. Any more comments? Okay.
I wanted to ask procedurally how the city would handle. We would like to cross-examine their expert witness based on the rebuttal testimony and argument of counsel. And I wanted to see if the city allows that.
I'm looking to Lindsay.
I don't think the public is an actual party to this quasi-judicial, so I don't believe they have the opportunity to cross-examine. This commission, if you so allow additional public comment, could do so, but I don't believe they have the standing
Now,
for cross.
he's an attorney, is that?
Yes, I know Mr. Broom very well. He is
Okay,
an attorney.
sorry.
Yes, correct.
Does a notice of appearance modify that? Because we did file a notice of appearance.
I haven't seen your notice of appearance, but I don't believe there's been any decision or motion for this council to accept them as an intervening party. So my opinion is that the neighbors that are here would be public comment.
Okay. I'm gonna have to say no based on that. Sorry about that. Do you have any other comments?
Well, can we present it as a general statement then?
I believe the commission
Yeah.
can allow additional
Okay.
public comment, correct?
The application was filed with an existing land use zoning of PUD. Much was made of the fact that the PUD is irrelevant. The issue before the council would be, then what is the legal entitlement density and intensity that they're coming before you asking to modify, but for the existing PUD, if that was the basis of the application? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I see a few more hands, okay.
Sorry, this will be quick. I know y'all want to go home. I just want to touch back on something Mr. Sprain brought up a second ago, talking about being cost prohibitive due to 1 per 3 to 1 per 5 due to the restrictions placed. Commissioner Burry, you live in the Secretariat. Do you have city water and sewer, or just?
Actually, I'm on Sunnyside Drive.
Okay. I don't know what they have, but they are in the city. They are 5-acre lots, and I don't know if they have city water and they have septic tanks, or they're on well and septic tank, but.
It's just water. But Secretariat
septic,
is, what,
But,
just water?
yeah, I'm just saying that we do have other areas that are more in line with the surrounding homes of this area. And perhaps the city can work with the applicant and work out something like they did on Secretariat, where they can do the larger lots and make it cost effective. There seems to be, something we could work out here.
Okay, thank you. I saw a few more hands in the back. Yeah, please come forward.
Just want to rebut one comment the lawyer had to say about profits. I agree that in democracy and capitalism, profits are good and people should be striving for it. I have no problems with that, except drug dealers and pimps try to maximize their profits too. That doesn't mean it's right.
Sir, can you please restate your name? Just name and address for the record.
I apologize. David Hedrick, 7146 Sunnyside Drive.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Any other public comments? Yeah. Yeah, please state your name and address again.
Yes, James Littleton, 31620 Sun Valley Road. The first corner that they have to go by, as I've said, that corner gets missed a lot. Just examples, I won't say names, but one side of that corner, the man had to put up concrete posts because people hit it and left it. They didn't stay there. Yeah, and you run them down. And another one, this corner post got hit on his fence way up from the corner. Somebody did, and he ran into the corner fence, the corner post of the fence. He put up a big pole. So there's a lot of, they missed that corner a lot. But anyway, to get to that corner, you got Sleepy Hollow Road. That you can turn left and right on 441. Tomato Hill Road, you can only turn right. You can't go back towards Leesburg. Fern Drive is the same way. You can only turn right. That's where the Harley-Davidson shop's at. You can't go back towards Leesburg. Then to get to Leesburg, you got to run Sunnyside to the Forks and go to East Main. That's the only way to get out of there. So for this subdivision to be put in, I'm assuming 2/3 of them are going to run Sleepy Hollow Road. There's houses being put on that road. There's another developer in there. They did the subdivision on the corner of Old Tavares Road and Sleepy Hollow. That's finished. Now they're working on the back grove where the old grove used to be in the back along the woods. And that's going to be finished pretty quick. Now you got Miranda Homes doing that one on just after the subsidized housing, those three-story apartment buildings. So there's a lot of work going on Sleepy Hollow Road. I don't know how many more cars are going to be added whenever all this is done. But on my corner, AM and PM, if you got 150 houses, you got 2 cars per house, that's 300 cars. That's twice a day making that curve. Not once, twice. They got to go home, they got to go to work, they got to come back. That's a lot of cars. But anyway, I'm done.
Any other public comments? Any additional comments from the commission?
I would point out just a couple of things. They did mention the Sunnyside Trails development, which is contiguous to this development, and those are 5-acre lots in the city of Leesburg. I would also just look at, we get hung up on the traffic study about number of trips, but I'd ask everybody, look at the pictures. Look at where the tires are rolling out there, and it's pretty obvious that people are driving off the road quite frequently to have that look. So, whether we talk about trips being, the number, and there can be more trips, we've still got a road where people are driving in the grass quite frequently. And you can see that in just about all the pictures. So I would just point those 2 things out.
No, thank you. Any other comments from the commission? If not, roll call.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Commissioner Berry,
No.
Commissioner Carnell,
Yes.
Mayor Peterson.
No. So where's?
I would look to the attorneys, but
Yeah.
2 in this count, that's a no vote, that's a fail. You need a majority, you need have a majority of the commission, and you didn't get 3 votes. I think
I would agree with that, that your code requires a majority vote, so a tie is an effective denial.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, moving on to first readings, we have none. Non-routine items, we have none. Informational reports. The following reports are provided to the commission in accordance with the charter ordinances. No action required, but are there any comments from the commission after review? If none, we'll move on to city attorney items, and I just want to welcome Grant Watson to his first meeting from the law firm of Stone and Gherkin, our new city attorney. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an honor to be working with everybody here, and I certainly look forward to a great working relationship with everybody here, and just thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Lindsay. We learned some things tonight. We'll be swearing in our speakers from now on. City manager items.
I just wanted to go back to turn on the mic. Wanted to go back to the beginning of the meeting. We asked the mayor to pull the DOT stuff because the wrong presentation was in the package. So the presenter was like, I don't want to do that. We don't have the right. So we'll get it back on. It was just a error on our part. So not a big deal there. And again, too, I'd like to welcome Grant and look forward to working with the new council.
Roll call.
Commissioner Christian,
Al, I don't know if we can look at it. I know we approved it, but on West Main Street, there's the airplane repair shop. Looks more like an airplane junkyard. So I don't know if we could do anything with fencing or setbacks, but it looks terrible. That's all I have.
I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Berry,
I just want to thank Lindsay and welcome Grant. Look forward to it.
Commissioner Carnell,
Nothing tonight.
Mayor Peterson.
Just a quick comment. I've brought up the before. Yeah, I live right near Venetian Gardens. I drive by there all the time. As I look over there, I see this Venetian Center looks great. I love the Pat Thomas Field. Everything's just looking great. I commented on the building. I don't want to get into that tonight. I commented on the retention pond and the fencing. But somebody else brought this to my attention. Now I'm noticing it. The baseball field across the street in the northeast corner has a net up, but I don't believe they're playing baseball there anymore. Just from a beautification effort, I had some community people make a recommendation or ask if we could take that down. I just thought this was the environment to bring it up. Is there any comment? Take it down. Okay. That's going to make a few people happy. Thank you. That's all I have. Meeting adjourned.
Don't forget your meetings next month. Go back to City Hall.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we will be moving back to City Hall for the next commission meeting. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Good night.